Do you have everybody, Christine, or do you need to do a voice roll call?
I think I have everyone who's present. Is Lori Russell on?
She is not joining today.
She's not joining today. Okay. And how about Dr. Woods, Ricky Woods?
Dr. Woods is just joining.
Okay, great. All right. Yep, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, good deal. Thank you, Christine. Okay, we had want to welcome everybody to the meeting today. Appreciate you being able to dial in. Hopefully, cross our fingers, in the fall, maybe we can be in person. We do want to welcome Bridget Blanton. I see Bridget's on there, and she's our new member to the commission from Greensboro. Welcome, Bridget. We're glad to have you with us. This is a fun commission to serve on. We had the minutes circulated via email earlier for October 2020. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to read those. And now I ask, are there any corrections to those minutes? I am not hearing anybody have any corrections. Being that there are none, can I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Okay, so move from Dr. Woods. Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Rachel got that. Okay, all in favor, say aye. And aye. Aye by hands, everybody aye. Okay, Christine, have you got that? Any opposed? Okay, we have the minutes approved. Now we'll move on to the State Library update from Timothy Owens.
Thank you, Mary, and good morning again, everyone. So glad you're joining us for our spring meeting. In lieu of a PowerPoint presentation, as we have done in the past, I shared a document with the group with an update of our activities. I have a few other things that I'll cover, but I'll first see if there are any questions or comments about the materials in the items in that update. It's a very quiet group so far.
A lot going on, Timothy.
There is. Well, I do want to share some items that are not in that report, starting with at the department level. This past year, starting in January, there have been some changes in administration of the department. Secretary Susie Hamilton left the department for another position supporting the governor's work. And on January 1st, Governor Cooper appointed Reed Wilson as the Secretary of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. Prior to this, Secretary Wilson had served a 4-year term as Chief Deputy Secretary in the department, and he was over the natural resources of the division. So he was promoted January 1st. In April, Deputy Secretary Stacy Meyer was promoted to Chief Deputy Secretary. So she has stepped into Secretary Wilson's former role, although her portfolio still includes arts, libraries, and operations or administration, which includes budget and personnel. So she is still the Deputy Secretary over the State Library, and we look forward to continuing to work with her in that role. As of May 1st, Jeff Michael was appointed the Deputy Secretary for Natural Resources. So he is taking over the portfolio that Secretary Wilson had before he was promoted, and that includes the zoo, the parks, the Natural Science Museum, the aquarium. He joins us from UNC Charlotte, where he was a director of the Urban Institute. And so looking forward to seeing his work with the department. Also, last month, Tracy Burns, who had been an assistant secretary in the department, was promoted to Deputy Secretary for Diversity, Equity, Accessibility, and Inclusion. And that's a real focus of the department to increase equity, diversity, and inclusion. In her portfolio, she will oversee the NC African American Heritage Commission. She had been doing diversity work for the department before, but this will strengthen her role in that work. And we look forward to seeing how the department continues to increase our efforts in that area. And the new secretary, Secretary Wilson, has shared his priorities, and I'll just briefly describe those, what he sees for the department: expanding educational opportunities, improving public health, stimulating economic development, strengthening diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and battling climate change and enhancing community resiliency. And I think those are all areas where libraries can have a real supporting role in this work. So look forward to seeing how that ties into our work going forward and how we can support the work of the department. And I had hoped that Secretary Wilson would be able to join us to greet the group this morning, but he has had a conflict. And so now we will hope that he can join for our fall meeting so that he'll have a chance to speak with the group. You may have seen his video for National Library Week. I think he's going to be a great spokesperson for libraries. He believes in the work that we do, recognizes libraries as the keeper of the facts and how important some facts and science are these days, and how necessary those are. So hope that we'll have a strong advocate there. Any questions about the department level information? Well, I'll talk a little bit about money too. So the legislature, or as far as the budget for the next biennium, we did not have a budget for the past biennium, but we are hopeful that this year the legislature will pass a budget. The governor released his budget in March, and the two items for libraries that were included in his budget proposal were $1 million in recurring funds for state aid and $400,000 in recurring funds for NC Cardinal, the Resource Sharing Consortium. We are still waiting to see what the legislature's budget will be. The Senate had hoped to release a budget earlier this month, but I understand the Senate and the House leadership have not been able to agree on the bottom line dollar figure that will be the framework for their proposed budget. So they missed their previous deadline to share that, to release the budget and pass it on to the House. They will be working on that next week when they reconvene. So we'll see what happens, but it has been delayed. It sounds like it may be a week or two more at least before we'll have any news on that. And I know that we may hear later in the NCPLDA update, but the Directors Association was requesting $10 million in non-recurring for state aid, and also funding for NC Kids Digital Library. So we'll continue to watch that, the state budget. There were encouraging signs that they would be able to pass a budget this year. I'm hopeful that we will not go another biennium without a budget. So we'll keep you posted as that develops. On the federal level, the American Rescue Plan has included money directed toward libraries through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. In the update, I noted the ARPA funds that we are using for an SLNC ADAPT grant program. We received $4.3 million out of the funding that IMLS received. That nearly doubles our annual allotment for this year of grants to states funding. We've had some initiatives. We had our federal programs officer last week held, or earlier this week, had an information session on the SLNC ADAPTs. We had a series of workshops, Fiber Fridays, for public libraries to encourage broadband projects. And we're hoping that we'll see lots of great projects come in on June 15th, which is the deadline for that program. There are some other sources of federal funding available for libraries. We are waiting to see the final details about the emergency connectivity funding from the FCC. This is E-rate funding that will be available to libraries for providing access outside of the library to users, broadband access, so Wi-Fi, hotspot lending devices. There's also, you may have seen, for the consumer, there is the emergency broadband benefit that was released on May 12th. And this provides support for individuals who have lost income because of the pandemic. It provides, I think it's up to $50 per month for internet access. There's also the possibility of a $100 credit for devices. So we've been sharing news about that and hope that folks in the community will be taking advantage of that support to increase their internet access. There's funding available through education as well, the elementary and secondary school emergency response funds. Part of that, I believe they have $122 billion that's being provided to local education agencies, basically school districts. And out of that, there is a requirement that a percentage, I think it's 10%, be used for mitigating learning loss through summer learning programs and after-school programs. They have not designated that libraries are included in the use of that fund, but they do require meaningful conversations with the community on the expenditure of those funds for that programming. And so this is an opportunity for libraries to step up and reach out to their school districts and see about possibilities for supporting that summer learning and after school learning with that funding. Another piece of, another bit of funding that's out there, it has not been passed, is the Build America's Libraries Act, which for the first time in 20-some years would provide funding for library construction. Back in the mid-90s, when there was a change from the LSCA, the Library Services and Construction Act, to Library Services and Technology Act, that came with a prohibition on construction with those funds. But this push is out for $5 billion in funding for library construction, especially underserved areas. This would support renovations, retrofitting, also new construction. For North Carolina, if this were to pass, it would mean about $141 million for library infrastructure. The bill is unlikely to pass as a standalone bill as it was introduced. The hope is that it will be rolled into the infrastructure package, which is progressing. It's not in there yet, but they're hoping that there may be some movement to get that. They've had a number of signers, our North Carolina delegation, Representative Manning and Representative Ross have signed on, among others. And so we're hopeful that we'll see some progress with that funding. That would be a major change and a real benefit to libraries, because we know that our library facilities have not had a great influx of money, and there's not a dedicated stream of state funding for library construction either. Those are just a few highlights that I wanted to share. Any questions or comments about those items or anything else in the update?
Tim, this is Dr. Woods. I have one.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what is meant by the school system having meaningful conversation with partners around that summer loss? We're coming up on the summer, and that's one of the conversations we're having right now in Charlotte, because when we spoke with the superintendent, there is no plan at all right now on what to do with those funds.
And unfortunately, I don't have any specifics, and they did not provide guidance beyond that, having meaningful conversations with stakeholders and community members. And
are any board members aware of any conversations school systems were having with libraries or any community partners on what to do with these funds? Okay, that looks like a no.
And with a number of these programs, they are still developing some of the guidance around them. So it may be that there will be more guidance on what that should look like. I'm not certain, but I think it is worth libraries at least reaching out to the school systems to let them know that you are aware of this funding and might have some opportunities to support that work.
Thanks, Timothy.
Sure. And if I hear any more, I will share.
Okay.
Many of these are programs that are being built as they're taking off. So it's a most interesting time. And it is this, we are at this unusual confluence of the recognition of need and then this funding that's being directed. I think one thing out of the past year, legislators have recognized that internet access is a necessity and not a privilege, that it really is basically a utility. And also recognizing that in many areas, urban and rural, there are challenges with internet access and access to devices, and also the knowledge of how to use those devices and how to access the internet and the value of it. And so we are seeing programs that target digital inclusion specifically, such as that's the number one priority for the $4.3 million we've received from the Institute of Museum and Library Services for this program, is digital inclusion and broadband access. There's a little challenge there since you can't use the funds for construction, but they want to increase broadband. And some of that is laying fiber, for example, making those connections. So we have to work within those parameters. But I'm hopeful that we'll see some good results out of that funding. I don't know what this will mean for next year after this funding is expended. Other questions? And I know Charlotte, I'll just mention Dr. Woods, and you may be aware, Charlotte has received funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, a national leadership grant for a project in the West Boulevard neighborhood to expand broadband access in that underserved community. And I think that's just taking off now, and so we don't have a lot of details, but Seth Irvin, their Chief Innovation Officer, shared some information at one of our sessions about that project. So that will be exciting to watch and see how that might be replicated.
Yeah. Thanks.
One other item I'll mention, speaking of IMLS, just so everyone's aware, I can't remember if I shared it with the list, but Chapel Hill Public Library is a finalist for the National Medal. They have not, I've not seen the announcement yet, but it should be any day now of, they will choose 3 libraries and 3 museums for the National Medal. But they were one of 15 libraries across the country as finalists for the National Medal. So it's always nice to see North Carolina libraries represented in that mix, and keeping my fingers crossed that their work will be recognized. Any other questions? I'll ask for one bit of feedback. As far as the approach for the state library update, do you like this better than a PowerPoint? Do you like a PowerPoint better than this approach? Is it good to have the update ahead of time? I'm open to tweaking this approach, and I want to make it as engaging as we can. Any feedback on that? I saw some head shaking, I think.
I think it's nice to have it ahead of time, because then you can kind of peruse it and see, what jumps out. And, but I also think it's really nice to have you talk through some of those things, because we might miss some of it otherwise. So I think a combination of having it ahead of time, so we've got that information, and then you're walking us through it, is really helpful.
Right. I agree.
I agree. I like the personal approach here.
Okay, then we'll continue in this manner going forward. Any other? I'm just going to skim back through to see if I hit many of the highlights that I wanted to talk about. Any other questions? We're moving right along on our agenda. Mary, it looks like you are.
Okay, I am on my phone. Are you ready for the federal funding highlights, or with Catherine?
I'm ready.
Okay, all right, you can roll.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Commission, for having me. So I just wanted to talk today about what I call our special opportunities that we've been able to offer over this past year. I wanted to start with our SLNC CARES program. These were funds that were received from the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the CARES Act, like with the funds that we just received for the American Rescue Plan. They had specific spending priorities of digital inclusion and emergency relief. So that is the focus of our CARES program. And we were able to issue those awards last year. We rolled out very quickly. We had a very abbreviated timeline, but we were able to use our existing structure of grant programs to really execute these grants out quickly, which is a success. And it's a challenge to do things so quickly with a sudden allotment of awards. And I just wanted to go through some of the issues that librarians have seen over this past year. As we've all read in the news, supply chain issues have been prevalent throughout the entire year, particularly hotspots, Chromebooks and laptops, even tablets. These are devices that all libraries were trying to purchase, but not only libraries, K through 12 schools, academic institutions. So these were items that were high in demand. Some libraries didn't even get their Chromebooks until just last month. So kind of rolling out these activities has been slowed due to these delays, but they've still been able to offer digital literacy trainings, proving once again that librarians are problem solvers and resilient. And you probably also heard about hotspot recalls. There is over 2 million hotspots that were recalled due to overheating. So we've had some libraries having to get replacement for those. So again, delays in being able to provide access to their patrons. And then many of these grants brought new technology available to the libraries, which means they had to institute new policies and procedures to be able to successfully lend out these materials to their patrons. But that's also developing new maintenance on devices. For instance, if you have 50 Chromebooks, how do you maintain and clear those devices to ensure that patron privacy is achieved? So just working through those workflows. But that being said, there have been many successes with this program. We were able to award nearly 96% of the available CARES funds to libraries, which is amazing. I'm very proud of that. And already we paid out nearly 68% of the award. And is a very strong spending rate. That's a very strong fiscal indicator, especially considering that tomorrow is actually the start of the final quarter of these grants. These are they are running off cycle from our traditional program. It's not tied to the state fiscal year due to the timing of the awards. These awards don't end until the middle of August. So the fact that we've nearly spent 3/4 of the awards already before the final quarter has started is a very strong indicator fiscally. And so one thing that we were able to implement with these CARES grants is to connect the project managers with each other. We kind of set up a forum through an online software that we have. And we wanted to be able to provide them a method to learn from each other, because they're the ones out there learning this technology, creating policies. They're able to share with each other the successes that they've had, but also challenges. If they have questions about a vendor, they're able to talk with each other about that. And that is something that is new to our program, but has been helpful in helping the project managers move throughout their project. And also with these grants, there have been, we've seen the libraries utilizing existing partnerships within their communities, but also creating new partnerships, which is always something that we want to see. Community engagement is our third goal within our LSTA 5-year plan. And this really just demonstrates how LSTA funds is achieving community engagement throughout our state. So Timothy mentioned Fiber Fridays earlier, and several of our LSTA awardees discussed the projects that they're working on relating to digital inclusion. And so the projects from Amy Regional Library, Wayne County Public Library, Neuse Regional Libraries, and Catawba County Public Library are great examples of libraries working within their communities to allow residents the ability to achieve success in school, work, and life. And with SLNC Cares, we saw many libraries partnering with our school systems, and some of them, these partnerships are brand new. So not only have students in K-12 schools benefited, so have adult learners through our community colleges and public and private universities and colleges, along with our youngest readers through early literacy efforts and other members of our communities, like workers who are looking for jobs. So I did want to share some feedback that I've heard from our SLNC Cares grants. And just keep in mind that these projects are ongoing and that more data is coming in with their final reports as they start to wrap up their grants within the next 3 months. But I just wanted to share some of the successes that we've seen. So Stanley Community College received a grant, and by working with other departments at the college, the library was able to identify students in need of internet access. And with the grant, they were able to purchase hotspots for circulation along with the data plans for a year. So pre-pandemic, but especially when the pandemic hit, a student was desperately struggling to complete her courses due to unreliable internet. She was one of the first to check out a hotspot from the library and was immediately able to work within her classes like she wanted to because of reliable internet. When the classes became manageable, she started taking on extracurricular activities within the college. And she became very actively engaged with Phi Beta Lambda and was actually just named an officer in the North Carolina Phi Beta Lambda Association. And when staff recently spoke to the student, she said that none of this would have been successful she wouldn't have been successful in classes or in the student organizations without the assistance of a hotspot. She also was able to use a Chromebook that the library had to succeed with her courses. So at Farmville Public Library, they were able to purchase hotspots and data plans for students to use. The school system was already implementing a one-to-one laptop program, so the need for devices to connect to the internet wasn't needed. The access to the internet was the priority. So the program has been very successful, and they were able to acquire as many hotspots as possible through the grant, but they said it wasn't enough for the need that was shown to the library. And data is still being gathered, but one comment that was received from a parent of 2 children who have participated was that as a mother of 2 student elementary school children said, their internet connection was too slow to support 2 simultaneous Zoom sessions. And only with the borrowed hotspot device were they able to both attend school at the same time. They were able to travel away from home, but still log into their school Zoom sessions to attend class. So at Davidson County Public Library, the CARES grant that they received allowed the library to purchase hotspots. As you can see, there is a theme here. Lots of hotspot lending is occurring within SLNC CARES. But by working with the school system, Davidson County was able to check out hotspots to students in need of an internet connection. They worked with the media coordinators and the social workers at the school to identify the students specifically without home access. So in a family of 4, a father lost his job due to COVID-19 related workforce reductions, and the mother's income was not primary. So the loss of income meant that the family had to decide between paying for electricity and rent or internet access. And as a result, they lost access to their internet because they couldn't pay all the bills that they needed to. And the issue was identified because the students stopped completing their work. The school social worker reached out to the family, and they worked with the library to get the student access to hotspots. And this also, the access to the hotspot allowed 2 different children to be able to complete their schoolwork and pass for the year. It also resulted in the parents feeling much less overwhelmed in knowing that their students could do their work. Plus, there was no burden of increased cost to the family. And this access meant important peace of mind that the students could work and pass, and it made the parents feel better knowing that the job loss wasn't preventing the children from succeeding in life. And so, we've talked about our K through 12 schools, but we also awarded to public and private institutions, academic institutions. At Lees-McRae, their CARES grant was used to purchase Chromebooks. They actually had students on campus during the fall and spring. And so as a college that had students on campus, they had at least 3 instances of students needing to be quarantined who didn't have devices to access virtual learning. Without them, with the Chromebooks, they were able to still attend their coursework, and without it, they wouldn't have been able to pass. So students were also allowed to take their Chromebooks home. They had online exams. They left campus after spring break and took their final exams at home. They were able to take the Chromebooks home and then ship the Chromebooks back to the library. So they were able to use the Chromebooks throughout the end of the academic year and do the work that they needed to do. So with Randolph County Public Library, they were able to purchase tablets to use with their early literacy parents as teachers programs, and they call it the PAT program. The PAT program works one-on-one with at-risk families to ensure that their young children are prepared to start school. And so pre-COVID times, the coordinators would make home visits, but they had to move to virtual visits during the pandemic. They found that half the families they served only had very old smartphones, in some cases just a traditional phone, which made the virtual visits very difficult. They were able to use these iPads to connect virtually with the families in a visual format. And so a story from one of the coordinators is that The mom has participated in the PAP program for 2 years, and which was ever since her son was born. She cannot read or write in her native language of Spanish and has always been intimidated by reading with him. Her son is now 2 years old and loves books. And thanks to the iPad, I was able to switch from weekly phone calls with the family to doing a Zoom visit and coach her through the interaction and see it in action. So the mom not only learned how to connect with the coordinator on Zoom using the technology, but she was also able to read with her son and teach him through it. And that was a very proud moment for that coordinator. This family faces a lot of challenges, but they're brave and they persevere through it. So those are just some of the success stories that we've heard with our SLNC Cares grants. But also something new that we're able to offer, and this is purely because of the pandemic, are our COVID response mini grants. So over the past year, we have offered 2 rounds of these mini grants, and they allow libraries to purchase safety supplies, but also to adapt services for safe environments for patrons and staff. A priority for us in offering these opportunities was to ensure that we weren't adding a major burden to library staff, as we knew that libraries had a lot going on. We wanted to make it as simple as possible for you to be able to receive funds and to deliver the services that patrons are expecting. But we still had to gather the required information to ensure that we were maintaining federal and state compliance. So with the abbreviated applications and final reporting, I do feel like we successfully achieved this goal, and I'm personally proud of the support we were able to provide libraries. So in the first round of funding, we received we awarded 125 libraries around $250,000. Safety supplies were the most requested and purchased item, from anything from face masks and coverings to gloves, hand sanitizer, UV sanitation lights and boxes, to plexiglass sneeze guards to put on the service desks and staff facing areas. So with this second round of funding that just ended at the beginning of this month, we awarded up 83 libraries, $218,000. And there was a bigger shift from libraries purchasing these safety supplies to adapting programs and services. We saw things like take-home early literacy kits with books, printed activities, and crayons for children to use as programs are happening virtually. They still have the supplies needed to be able to participate. And also we saw portable audio systems, pop-up tents, and spacing dots to adapt training or programs that would occur inside the library to be outside with spacing, and also for our programmers to be able to reach everybody, given that they are socially distanced and so everyone can hear. So with this round, we were able to pilot and test our paperless workflow, which has proven successful and is going to lead the LSTA program into the next fiscal year with near zero paper footprint, which this is something that Jackie Haskey and I have both wanted to do, but we were delayed last year due to CARES and just getting through last year the best way that we could. And so Jackie designed the file framework and implemented it. And speaking of Jackie, I do want to acknowledge her. Our LSTA program would not be possible without Jackie Haskey. Her work is critical to the success of our program, and she's involved in the whole life cycle of the grant, and she provides thoughtful and innovative solutions. And I appreciate working with her, and she is an asset to the state library. And so looking forward for the next year, this is an exciting time. It's a challenging time, but still exciting. We're looking forward to LSLNC adapts, like Timothy says. It's not often you get to say the words no match with words of this size. It is exciting to be able to pass this benefit on to our libraries, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Does anybody have any questions?
Catherine, I have a question, something I've been wondering about. When we talk about devices, instead of saying laptops or tablets, oftentimes people are saying Chromebooks. Is there a particular benefit to getting Chromebooks as opposed to different laptops?
So there are different approaches to how libraries select what device to choose. I know there is one library system that they were implementing Chromebooks, so they wanted to, or the K through 12 schools were implementing Chromebooks, so they wanted to ensure that the folks who were using the Chromebooks already had a base knowledge of how to use that Chromebook, so that was why they chose to use Chromebooks. We saw the academic institutions more leaning towards laptops, as the adult learners often need, more operating power that is afforded with a laptop as opposed to a Chromebook. But Chromebooks they are very versatile. You can still do word processing activities, but you're not able to have what I would consider a fully developed operating system like Windows and Mac.
I think that, I'm sorry, I was just going to comment. I think with Chromebooks, I assume that they're a little less expensive than other laptops, but also I've noticed Chromebooks didn't quite work with our learning management systems like Blackboard or Moodle. It seems that they were having some issues with that. So that might be one other factor involved.
And you're correct, Libby. I've also heard that the Chromebooks don't work very well with the testing software that academic institutions use. That was a big issue come final exam time.
I wouldn't mind saying the fact that to get away from the technology end of it, the people at the state library were really great in getting these grants to us, the funds to us, dealing with the applications and everything, streamlining that whole process. Thumbs up and hats off to the state library staff that did that.
Thank you, Michael.
Hey, no problem. You earned
I
it.
totally echo Michael's statement. Is I know we always have a lot of questions out of our library system, and y'all are just terrific at responding to probably the same questions you hear over and over again. And your patience and helpfulness is just stellar. So thank you so much for what you all do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I will third or fourth that, and do want to give a shout out to Catherine Prince and Jackie Haskey for their work on these programs. In a normal year, there would be one LSTA grant cycle, typically, with maybe a mini grant thrown in the mix at some point. And that's a lot to manage. But over the past year, we've had not one, not two, but 3 special grant programs, and now we're starting a 4th special grant program on top of managing the other work. So it really has been amazing, the support that they have given, the passion Catherine and Jackie bring to this work, and all of the library actually. But really appreciate that, and it's so exciting to hear some of the positive results that are coming, the impacts of this funding, and how it is helping to carry forward the work of libraries and helping to respond to the pandemic and increasing access to internet and digital inclusion. So I will second that applause and really appreciate their work.
Well, just to continue the thanks, I do want to thank senior staff for their support, but also library development. There's a lot of internal processes that happen. We do have to review all of these grants. So we've all had to take on additional responsibilities as assigned, but without the support of senior staff and library development, it can be very difficult to make these decisions, but also the LSTA advisory committee and our budget officer, Kathy Woods, who also had an increased workload with processing payments. So, it's truly a team effort.
Well, I hope you pass on that to the team, Timothy.
Definitely. And I'll also add that I think it's the impacts from that CARES funding, what Catherine was talking about, that was under $1 million that we received and had awarded, and it had all of those impacts. But I think seeing that work with those funds helped encourage Congress to appropriate $200 million out of the rescue plan funds to IMLS for work in this same area. So we have shown that we can be good stewards of the funds and also roll programs out quickly that do positively impact the communities. So it's also a testament to the libraries who have stepped up for these projects, and thanks to all the libraries who are carrying out this. It's additional work on libraries too. So appreciate the embrace of these programs and the work that local libraries are doing. Mary, did you have a comment or question?
I just want to, as others have said, how appreciative those of us out in the counties are of the work the state library's done to get these funds flowing, because I know we've had a lot in Wayne County and it's been very helpful, and there's been a lot of challenges with technology, and the state library's been a big help. So we want to be sure and pass that thanks along to everybody, Timothy. Are we ready to move into the next agenda item on the library standards? Think so, Timothy?
I think so. I don't see any other questions or hands
Any other
raised.
questions? Okay. All right. I hope everybody's had a chance to review. I believe it was 46 pages, unless I've forgotten what the number was when I started reviewing it. And a lot of detail, a lot of work's gone into that. So I want to applaud everybody that worked on that. I know some of you on the call were members of this committee.
All right, well, if you're ready, this is Linda Reynolds, and I'm going to share my screen. You have a presentation. All right, thank you all. I appreciate this opportunity to provide an overview on the Public Library Standards project and to receive feedback and answer questions regarding the draft 2021 North Carolina Public Library Standards. I would like to begin by addressing the question, why statewide standards? Nationwide public library standards do not exist. To fill this void, many states have created their own standards that aim to complement local planning efforts, allowing for responses to unique community needs while ensuring a consistent standard of library service across the state. State standards can provide local library systems with best practices to evaluate progress, leverage funding, and help ensure libraries are meeting defined levels of service. Standards can also be beneficial when communicating the value of the public library and how the library can align its priorities with those of the community. The State Library of North Carolina is leading the effort for the creation of revised and updated North Carolina Public Library Standards, a project funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the Library Services and Technology Act. The 2019-20 Standards Project was an assessment conducted by the State Library Standards team to determine the need for updating the 2012 standards through a process of focus group meetings, interviews, and surveys with librarians across the state. The standards team analyzed the findings and determined a need for revised and updated standards to include metrics and levels of service that can be used by libraries of all sizes in the state. The team also identified the need for communication and training resources to accompany the revised standards and made a recommendation for the assistance of an outside consultant for the creation of the revised standards. For the current project year, the state's library standards team shared the data collected from the assessment project with an outside consultant to assist in the creation of the 2021 Public Library Standards that offer relevant, dynamic, and flexible community-based standards to guide libraries in providing quality service based on community needs. The consultant conducted stakeholder opinion research through the public meetings and interviews and performed a comprehensive environmental scan of other state standards, allied industry standards, and best library practices and trends. The results of this research and analysis have been used in the writing of the revised standards. An 11-member standards working group formed in 2020 has been instrumental in providing guidance and feedback to refine the structure of the standards. This group consists of librarians from municipal, county, and regional library systems across the state, representatives from the State Library Certification Commission and State Library Commission, and the Dean of the NC Central University School of Library and Information Sciences. I would like to review just a few highlights of the draft standards. The standards have been designed for use as a self-assessment tool to allow public libraries to conduct an assessment based on their library's unique community needs. This assessment can accommodate libraries of all sizes and configurations, from a small branch all the way up to a large metropolitan area. The standards are organized into 5 categories, subdivided into 18 operational areas. Within each operational area is a stated outcome and accompanying indicators. The outcomes answer the question of why a library might follow or enact the various indicators. Libraries are not required to meet every indicator. Rather, the indicators are designed to be ambitious yet achievable so that a library can meet most of them, as determined by local needs. When most or all of the indicators are met, the outcome can be realized. All indicators except governance are organized by tiers of service: essential, enhanced, and exemplary. These tiers understand that libraries are unique, have access to different resources, and must make their own decisions about where to focus their efforts. There is no requirement for a library to meet every indicator within a particular tier. The tiers do allow for a library to aspire to reach the next level and are intended to be cumulative so that a library that is striving for exemplary will have met most of the essential and enhanced indicators. Including metrics in the revised standards was a request the standards team received frequently during the assessment phase and was supported by the working group to be included in the 2021 draft standards. A comparative data review of other state standards was used to generally identify the median range between the 25th and 80th percentile to offer ambitious yet achievable measurements for the North Carolina standards. Other measurement tools used for the facility metrics include whole building design guide and web junction space planning. To assist in library efforts, helpful resources areas have been included in the standards. Libraries will be encouraged to suggest additional resources for inclusion in subsequent standards additions to ensure the standards stay relevant. The inclusion of these helpful resources has been well received by the working group. The standards working group met on April 28th to review and provide invaluable feedback on the standards. The group was also asked to complete a survey, and those results show an overall satisfaction with the draft standards with regards to design, completeness, and usefulness. I'm going to pause here for a moment just to give you an opportunity to read some of the comments from the working group. Several discussion topics came up during the working group meeting that are being reviewed by the standards team and the consultant. To address the issue that public libraries have different governing authorities that make decisions for the libraries, a definitional note was added under next steps working with this document that states, for simplicity's sake in this document, references to library within indicators includes actions taken by the library's governing authority, municipal, county, or governing board. A review of the indicators by the working group included discussion on the movement between tiers, revised wording, and maybe considerations for additions. Some of these revisions were included in the draft you received, and others are still being considered by the standards team and the consultant. Discussion was also held on the use of percentages and numerical value for the metrics. Some of the working group felt percentages should be used for all metrics, and others were comfortable using a numerical value where applicable. The standards team and consultant decided to utilize both types of metrics where appropriate in the standards. With regards to metrics for bandwidth in the technology area, it was suggested to include a helpful resource to track appropriate bandwidth, rather than to include specific values that can become outdated. One request from the majority of the working group is for the creation of an evaluation tool or dashboard that can be used to score the indicators and provide an overall rating. The State Library Standards team will evaluate the feasibility of creating such a tool to accompany the standards. In addition to any feedback offered during today's meeting, we want to provide an additional time for you to review the draft standards. And so we've set a June 4th deadline that you can email me directly to provide your feedback. Once all the feedback has been received, the standards will be revised and a final draft will be submitted to the State Library Commission for approval at a later date. Once approved, the standards will be introduced to North Carolina Public Libraries and will include an implementation toolkit and training provided by the State Library Standards team. The implementation toolkit is being designed for a wide array of public library stakeholders that will have different informational needs and communication preferences related to public library standards. The toolkit will offer recommendations related to messaging strategy, marketing communications channels and tools, and options for training modules. The working group will be reviewing the implementation toolkit at their next meeting. So I want to thank my team, the consultant, and the working group for all of their effort and time in preparing these draft standards. And I am available to answer any questions and to hear your feedback today. And I thank you for your time.
I'd like to add something to that. I was able to work with several others and on the team that Linda's talking about, and it was a great experience and a lot of good things happened. One of the things I'd like to just say is that this is more of a library system branch tool to look at their operations, not something that's the state library is going to really use to grade us or anything like this. So a lot of people might be concerned with that, but it's really a self-assessment for us, I believe. Isn't that right, Linda?
That is correct.
I just want to say that just as I've been able to look through it, I'm impressed with what you all have put together. I think it does definitely, at least on the public library side, allow us to leverage as it relates to funding and specifically the need for more staff. And so I appreciate that. And it's real. A lot of times when you look at these standards from other places, they don't really apply across the state with library systems that are so different. And when I look at this list, it doesn't matter where I am in North Carolina. I can look at this list and make it work for us. So you all are to be commended for that.
Thank you, Bridget.
How long have you had these standards? This is a revision?
This is a draft of revised standards. The standards we had before were from 2012. And so we are creating new standards or revising those.
You did say that in the presentation and I had already forgotten.
That's okay, Libby.
I think this is awesome to have something like this. I would love to see something developed for community colleges in a similar manner.
I'll let somebody else take on that. Well, I realize, as Mary said, that this is a many-page document. I think 40, close 49, maybe almost up to 50 pages now. So I understand that you certainly need more time to review and digest and see how this will work for those of you that are with public libraries, how it'll work for you. So Timothy has put my email in the chat. And I appreciate your taking the time, as you have time, to review these in more detail and send your comments to me. And but we're going to continue to be working through all of the feedback that we received from the working group And we will get another draft working and add your feedback into that. And then, as I said, that'll all come back to the State Library Commission once we've received all the feedback that we're going to be asking for your approval at a date that Timothy will determine. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, and thanks, Linda, and all the team and the commission members who have assisted in the working group as well with that. It's a great effort, and we look forward to seeing results. So as Linda says, it will come back to this group for formal approval once we get to the final draft at a date to be determined.
Okay, Timothy, we ready to move along?
I think so.
All right. Thank you so much, Linda. There's a lot of work gone into that. So we look forward to approving that probably. Timothy, do you think we'll have to wait to our next meeting or have something special to do? A special time to approve it?
Depending on how the work flows this summer, it may be that we will call a special session.
Okay.
Move
we
it
look
along.
forward to it. Okay. Well, our next, we're moving along with our agenda. Well, our next, does anybody need a break? Let me ask that. Does anybody need to take a quick break, or do we want to try to plow on through and get done?
I see a head shaking for a break.
Is that Rachel?
Oh, no break.
Keep
Plow
going.
forward.
Keep going. Okay, let's keep going. I think we can shortly be
Okay.
done. Okay, the NCPLDA representative update. Is that Bridget? I'm trying to understand who is the.
I did not designate or reach out. Last time it ended up being a little free form. So I'm hoping maybe any or all of the three will chime in.
As Bridget is new and Michael shakes his head no, Bridget is going to say this little bit and let Michael and Karen do what they do so they can train the rookie is how we're going to handle this. Of course, NCPLDA is still in the phase of meeting virtually. We have not met in person. We met in March. We are continuing to look at the activities and those kinds of things that are impacting our public libraries here in North Carolina as we open in various stages to the public, some being completely open, some just now opening, and looking and supporting each other, including looking at the mental health and wellness of staff as we take this on. I think that's been one of the topics of discussion because that's important. I think across the state, some people, depending upon how long we've been closed or open and to what degree, is actually having an impact on staff, because as you all know, the longer you go without providing some of the services, the more anxiety that's created. And so that's become an issue that we've talked about as a group. I think also we are looking at, some of us are participating in some racial diversity and equity work that's being done thanks to Timothy and the State Library by Dr. Love Crossling that I think is making an impact. And we are considering a hybrid meeting for August so that we can actually have folks in person and those who have to access remotely. I think Donna and the team are thinking that may be something that NCPLDA needs to consider just for the long term, regardless of COVID. We've had higher participation in our meetings through COVID than we did prior to COVID because of just the transportation and time off and away from work kind of thing. So I'm going to leave it at that and turn it over to Michael and Karen to fill in the rest.
One of the other things that we looked at one of our recent NCPLDA meetings is looking more closely at vision, mission, and values and action plan kinds of items. And those are hard things to really come to consensus on. Sometimes you get bogged down in wordsmithing, but words are important ways to represent ideals. And I thought we really had some good discussion about that. And a lot of that information is, even for those people who cannot attend the meetings, is then available through a dynamic website that's growing for the public library directors, which there's really great work done by membership on all kinds of things that you sometimes take for granted. Things like our website that's not an easy task. And so there's some really good work being done to make things more transparent and provide that information in a timely fashion. So really good work by a lot of the membership. And I echo Bridget's sentiment about we see more people by meeting virtually than is possible through in-person meetings. And I love to attend those in-person meetings, but it can be a fairly in both expense and time to get to those meetings, especially for those of us who live in the far reaches of the state, whether that be east or west. So it's been terrific to see a lot of faces that just haven't been able to make meetings. So getting those contributions from other people has been great. It's kind of I'm in a regional library system, and regions are really different. And we have our own governance, which sometimes is challenging, especially when things like COVID come down the pike. We're not governed by our counties directly. So it's one thing that has happened for regional librarians is our NCPLDA regional representative has been organizing monthly meetings for regional directors. And again, that's a really helpful tool that kind of grew out of COVID necessity of virtual, but it's increased participation. And I think that's something for us to learn from, is that even though I know we love to get together, it really maximizes and allows more participation to do things virtually. So particularly been nice for regional directors and the support that we get from each other. So that's been terrific.
I would like to add things about a couple of shout outs. One would be to Jennifer Sackett, who is the director in Lincoln County, who is really the person that does a lot of advocacy work with the state and state legislature and everything like that, working on getting us more funds. And she works with the lobbyist that is hired by the NCPLDA, not paid for by libraries or county government funds, but by the Friends of the Library to fund that position. Really tries to help us out by getting funds. Timothy mentioned $10 million in state aid for public libraries. We're asking for non-recurring, which is above and beyond what the governor has in his budget. But also just the work we've done over the last year under Bridget and then under Donna, the current president of NCPLDA, the work on COVID-19, the discussions we've had at all of the meetings, trying to share how different libraries are reacting and benefiting, which is like, again, hats off to Timothy and his staff for getting us more funds for COVID. But one of the first meetings, I think, under Bridget last summer was the person from Oregon, who was
Seattle.
Seattle. He's now going to be this Charlotte Mecklenburg Library Director, isn't he? So, I mean,
That is correct. He is in place now. Maurice Turner. He likes to be called MT.
Okay, well, he gave a good talk, last summer, in what is it, August meeting, I believe it was, and then now he's one of ours.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll come to our meeting, the shared meeting in August up there in wherever we meet.
Anything else from NCPLDA? Thank you all for those updates. And you may have seen, I dropped the new mission, vision, and values into the chat.
Okay. Timothy, are we ready to move on to the next agenda item?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. The next one is Lori on.
Lori is not, but Libby will be.
Libby's going to do it. That's right.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes.
I'm having
No
amnesia
problem.
too, Libby.
That's okay. Lori sends her apologies for not making it today. She had a conflict. She asked me to give a brief report. NCLA has also been meeting virtually, of course, and we had a meeting April 30th, our last executive board meeting, and we've been talking about our listserv. I believe the state library uses Simple List. Is it called Simple List?
Simple Lists, that's correct.
Right. We're looking at moving to that service for our listserv, and we're planning to have it available for all of our members and all of our sections to be able to use. The server that we have been using for many years has been hosted by UNC Chapel Hill. So it's an old server from what I understand, and we need to make this move. So in any case, that's what we're planning to do in the next month or so. So that's going to be very good for our membership, we believe, to keep that communication flowing. Also, I'm going to try to share the screen here and talk a little bit about conference. Can you all see the NCLA? Okay. This is our conference page on the website. I'm the vice president right now, and I'm over the NCLA planning committee, conference planning, and we are putting together a conference that's going to be mostly virtual, hosted October 18th through the 22nd. And we plan to have a few, hopefully, in-person events at the Benton Convention Center. It's going to, of course, depend on how things are, but if the stars align and the virus continues to diminish and everybody's getting vaccinated, then we're hoping to have at least maybe on Thursday and Friday, and we're going to continue to put updates on this website. So if you'd like more information, of course, contact me, and if there's anything that NCLA can do to partner with any of the other library groups, please reach out and let Lori or I know.
Okay. Thank you, Libby. All
Thank
right.
you.
We're down to new business. We're moving right along. We're 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Timothy, do you have any new business items? I believe you do.
I do. I actually have a couple. One I could have talked about in the update, but there is a bill out now that includes a change in the statute for the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. The change that we have working through reflects that the Library of Congress, the National Library Service, their expansion of eligibility for these services. Our change will be a change from library for the referring to blind and physically handicapped, where we talk about serving these people, to serving those unable to use standard print, because it is expanded, and some of the Library of Congress language, enabling language now, makes it easier for folks with dyslexia or some other reading disorders to be able to take advantage of these programs. So we have that change coming in the statutes. And once that's approved, then the next step will be a change in the code. We will request change in the administrative code, which will include a change in the name of the LBPH. And what we are looking at, and Carl may feel free to pipe up here, what we're looking at is along the lines of SLNC, accessible books and library services, or ABLES. There is a change across the country where instead of focusing, referring to this group according to a handicapped or some language in that area, looking at the services that we provide. Some states have gone to talking book and braille libraries. We are looking at accessible books and library services to reflect the services we would provide as opposed to the population served. So I'll toss that out and see if anyone has any immediate reactions, any comments or thoughts on that new naming of the library. It will be a several months process once the statute is changed to go through the administrative code changes.
Timothy, I'd just like to add that along with the change in the legislation, that there has been a change and a loosening of the approval process so that people who have a learning disability no longer require the certification of a medical doctor. In fact, the standards for the visually impaired are being expanded to everybody now.
And so this means thank you, Carl. And this means librarians would be able to certify those learning disabilities for eligibility. So we expect that there will be, and we hope that there will be an increase in usage of the service, but this will expand the eligible population. So that's a significant change. Any comments, or we'll keep you posted as that develops. Okay, the other item then for new business is something we've discussed before, but would like to see about getting back on the table, and that's the formation of a support group for the state library, a friends group or foundation. As it is now, the Library for the Blind and Physically Handicapped has a friends group, but the state library itself does not. And so we've mentioned this in the past, but it would be, I think, beneficial for us to have that support. So 2 questions that I would come out with here. A, do you support that? What do you think this is a good idea? And B, who would be interested in helping with this and maybe forming a task force or committee to move it forward? We cannot do it alone. We need friends.
Timothy, I like the idea, and I'm willing to work with someone on the task force.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks.
Could you tell me what you envision the Friends role as? Could you clarify that a little bit?
Some of that, I think this group would help us bring into focus, but one thing is we've discovered that some of the programming, some funding opportunities, some support, we are not able to provide with state funds. And so having the support of these private funds would help us with programming initiatives and help us raise the profile of the state library.
So I know from having seen it, and I live in Raleigh, the History Museum and the Science Museum have these groups. And so what I've seen is they'll advertise events, and this may not be for everybody, but it tends to get a lot of 20 and 30 somethings who like to go out and be active in the community. And they have events and fundraise for the organization, and they'll have like a night out at the history museum and a party, and it brings these young people together, and then they raise money for the organization to do anything they want. So that's what I, just my personal experience with that. And so, folks in their 20s and 30s seem to, older people too, but they tend to really like these types of things as getting out, getting involved in the community, getting involved in a good activity, and meeting other people of their same age group who they can date. So it's a community activity. And so that's my experience. I know everyone's laughing. I didn't go, I moved to Raleigh after I was older, but that's what I've seen it kind of advertised and discussed as. And so some of the people who participate in like sorority events, so like I see AKAs who are involved in these. I see people who have traditionally been involved in like junior guild projects, like it's this, or junior league, sorry. So this is the type of thing that we've seen, and it's just a fundraiser that the facility itself doesn't have to do a lot for. They often seem to have a person who's a liaison within the facility to make sure that they're not misrepresenting their aims or what they can do. But it seems like the library doesn't have this. And it's a good way to advertise the state library, what it could do, and to just raise money on the side. So yeah, that's my experience. So I would be happy to participate in this to see if we could help drum up support in a task force. And that would, I think the first thing would almost be reaching out to those organizations to see how they set it up and what they do.
And I've had some conversations with the Arts Council, who was the most recent forming, and they have expressed willingness to help us out and with their experience. I mean, there are some legal steps that we would need to take in this formation. But Rachel, you were right on with this engagement and providing opportunities, and some things that we can't do with other funds. Any other comments? So we have 2 potential task force members. Do I hear a third?
Timothy, I'll do it since we have a foundation here already. I kind of know some of that kind of stuff already. So yeah, I'll do it.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. And we won't stop with it. Yes, Jimmy.
I think it'd be really exciting if you can get those 20 and 30-year-olds, and all the friends groups I've seen for public libraries have not had many 20 and 30-year-olds, and I think that'd be great. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and we do want to increase engagement. That's part of our plan is breaking down barriers and increasing engagement, diversifying the populations that we serve and our programming. And I think this would be a good support mechanism for that.
Timothy, I wonder if there's a way to get the universities involved for the newly graduated MLS students. That might be a way to kind of have them serve as ambassadors, as the people who are just getting into library studies, who are really interested in it and can speak to that within the community and drum up additional interest. I personally was a member of the Contemporaries at the Art Museum, which is their young professional group. And yeah, we need some sort of ambassador or some sort of program. To be in the Contemporaries, you had to pay a membership fee, but it got you discounted admission into the other events. If we perhaps offered a discount to people with a new MLS degree or current students that might be something that would entice them and make them want to join and then serve as ambassadors.
Good idea. Thank you, Christine.
Sounds like something NCLA can jump on too.
Also seems like maybe it could wrap around, there's a unique opportunity at this library to do a lot of genealogical research. And there are a lot of young people who are from North Carolina at our universities who don't quite know their family history, between so much of housing so many of these files, it seems like it could be a really interesting opportunity to help combine these. You want to join, we'll help you do this, and maybe we can step you along the way to move you into, to tell you, where your people are from and what we can show you as, this is your history. It would take some groundwork at the library, but that would be something that, if provided, could go back with each individual, and it's going to be shared among the family and can help translate further.
Another good suggestion to explore. Thank you.
This is very exciting, Timothy. I think I'm very supportive of all of this. So count NCLA in. We'll do whatever we can to help.
Okay, great. Thank you, Libby.
Yeah.
So we will work on convening this task force soon, and not to cut off the call for volunteers. People can, if you want to sleep on it, and if you wake up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning and think, I need to be in that group, let us know. Let me know.
Timothy, I just want to add in that I think the executive board of the LBPH Friends would be very happy to talk with anybody and provide, any kind of advice and resources that they can.
Thank you, Carl. We do have their expertise also to call upon.
Timothy, can I go back to the previous topic of new business? Which
yes.
Was is it possible for that maybe you and Carl could put together something for the librarians so that we kind of understand what's happening there, and maybe projections of how it could benefit our outreach programs, things like that, giving information to our Lions Club, which is the people that actually deal with blindness in our county and everything like that, or blind people. Just maybe so we understand better what's going on there.
Yes, we can do that. And I see Carl, I'm glad Carl is shaking his head yes.
I'll talk with our outreach people and we'll work something out, because it is a pretty significant change and will broaden our reach.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, Timothy.
Thank you, Mary.
Got any other new business?
That's all I had. I don't know if anyone else, any of the commission has anything they'd like to raise.
I personally just hope when we meet again in October, we can be in person, because I think we enjoy it more. It's nice to have the convenience of the WebEx, or the Zoom or whatever, but I think we can probably drive these issues like a friends group better if we're in person. And today would have been a beautiful day to travel. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then I guess we can adjourn our meeting and add back 27 minutes to everybody's day.
Well, we do want to make one acknowledgement first, Mary.
Oh, okay.
And
yes.
That's for our members who, we do have 3 members whose terms are expiring at this meeting. Now, it remains to be seen. There could be reappointments, But Anna Betts, Tammy Baggett, and our chair, Mary Bartlett, they have completed their terms as of June. So we still have you officially on for a little while longer, and it's possible that those could be re-upped. But just to thank you for your service to this group and appreciate your contributions. And Mary, special thanks to you for leading us through the pandemic year, keeping us on track and on target. So
thank you.
a
I'm hoping
shout
I'll
out
get
to-
reappointed. Okay, thank you, Timothy. And we appreciate having Timothy with us. He's done an excellent job through the pandemic, and look forward when he can get back to full speed ahead.
I hope in the
Okay.
fall we can be in the same room,
All righty. Okay.
maybe in
if there's no-
Durham for that delayed
Yeah.
visit to Durham.
Okay. Yes, Tammy, get to see your building in person rather than just ride by. Okay, anything else? Anybody? All right. Well, have a great weekend. Graduations are in some areas, and just a beautiful weekend coming up. Hope you get gas to go somewhere. All right. See you. Bye.
Stay well,
Thank y'all.
everybody. Thank you.